Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Tuesday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. Words of the day for the Lakers: margin for error. We'll explain next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, no matter how or where you get your podcasts. This one's always going to be free, never behind paywall. And Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go hang out with over 27,000 subscribers to the channel. All of whom, Andy, I hope, are signing up for the new Locked On Lakers newsletter. You go to lockedondaily.com and you get all the coverage from our podcast and around the league from the network, other shows on the network delivered to you every single day. Great way to keep up on the league and on the show. Want to let people know as well that today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Now's the perfect time to join. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. That's right. No need to win to get the bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks.com. Run your game. So, it's an expression, Andy, you and I have used a lot on the podcast over the years: margin for error. And man alive, were those words spoken and uttered and said many times after the game against the Clippers on Sunday. Oh my.
Yeah, that was a theme in terms of just the Lakers. They have a record well below 500 against teams above 500, and in a lot of cases, they've lost to those teams by 20 plus points. And the idea of how much can the Lakers withstand in terms of adversity over the course of a game and still come out on the winning side of it? And the answer is, as we've talked about a lot on this show, not much. I mean, this is a team, they're not bad, but whatever you think their ceiling is at their absolute best, we've seen enough evidence to know that the floor is not as high as it needs to be. Mm-hmm. And this is not a team that is steeped with either a lot of talent or a lot of athleticism or just a lot of different ways that they can completely overwhelm you. And they're not a team that is able to force tons of mismatches, like things like that. And as we've talked about, it's one of the reasons why their focus and their energy and the general commitment needs to be really high. They have to try to win a lot of games through execution, because they're not going to be able to just lean back on other inherent advantages to paper over their weaknesses. And this was something that came up with JJ Redick and LeBron after the game. JJ said, quote, "We don't have a huge margin for error, nor can we create that margin organically. It has to be emphasized daily to touch the paint, to play paint-to-paint mentality, to make the extra pass. We don't have a guy on our team that's going to necessarily always draw to the ball. We don't have a guy on our team that's going to be able to get past his guy one-on-one and to get to the paint and spread out the perimeter. Like, that's just not our team. So we have to do it through connectivity, through execution. And when we do that, we're really good." And this speaks to also something I know I've been harping on a lot over the last couple of weeks: run your effing offense. And the reason I keep bringing this up is that's part of the execution and part of the steps and part of process that will hopefully allow you to get the things that you're looking for. But it requires patience. It requires being methodical. It requires like a commitment for 48 minutes that, to be honest, we don't see enough of with this team.
And I think it also requires, and I think this is a place where people, particularly people who are really sort of charting all of this stuff, get a little concerned, is that it also requires the capacity to counter what defenses are doing to you. And, if you're getting, heavy, significant ball pressure, what do you do? If you're, they're taking away Anthony Davis on the post with a double, what do you do? Like, all of these things that the Lakers just aren't responding to when the opposing defense is presenting them roadblocks. Because I think a lot of the difficulties they have, to me at least, it seems like, come when what like plan A is sort of taken away. And, when you don't have, you can't punish people with just the guy who can just break down people off the dribble and get to the basket. Like LeBron isn't that guy anymore. He doesn't stand at the perimeter and blow past people the way he used to. He's terrifying in transition when he's in the move, but when it's against a set defense, LeBron has trouble beating guys off the dribble. We can all understand why, but that's where they are. That's not Gabe Vincent's game. That's not Rui Hachimura's game. That's not Max Christie's game. That wasn't D'Angelo Russell's game when he was there. He was maybe a little bit better at it, especially coming off screens and getting into spaces than some other guys. But again, you don't put D'Lo on an island, just have him break down people and get to the bucket. That's not his game either. And so, you combine that with kind of a lack of athleticism by NBA standards and all this stuff, and they become a much more one-note offense that, like you say, has to not just execute against whatever sort of base defense, step one defense that teams throw at them, but steps 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. And that's really, to me, where they seem to get getting buried.
It's not just, though. I mean, I think you're totally correct that they often don't react well to either adjustments to what they're doing and those counters that you mentioned, or just general adversity. But sometimes I feel like they're looking to take the easy way out on a lot of things before the adversity even presents itself. Like, they're a team that sometimes feels like they're looking for knockout blows, like in the second quarter. Like there was an example in the game, and I don't remember exactly when it happened, but there was a possession where the Lakers played pretty good defense, and they ended up getting a defensive rebound. LeBron took it up court and put up a transition 3 with at least like 18 or 19 seconds left on the clock. And he missed, and the Clippers, I believe, came back and scored on the next one. And that, to me, is like one of those, it's just a terrible shot. Like, even if he made it, it's a bad shot. Mm-hmm. And I feel like they will often take some of these bad, and I know it's not unique to the Lakers. All teams take bad shots, but bad shots don't affect all teams in the same way. And there are times where it feels like they jump to those openings because they don't have the patience to do everything you're supposed to do, or because they're not, I mean, this might be psychoanalyzing LeBron specifically, but you're not as invested in the whole 82 game of it all. And you're not, I'm not saying that he's sleepwalking through it, but we've talked before. Look, we talked before. For somebody like LeBron, and I think in some respects, Anthony Davis as well, this bleep ain't all that exciting, man. Like, it's kind of a drag. Like,
but then you are sort of saying that they're not taking those games as seriously and kind of sleeping.
I didn't say that. I want to make it clear. I'm not saying that it's always a question of not playing hard. I'm talking about just your overall investment in it. Just to make sure people understand what specifically I'm talking about. Sometimes I don't think they're playing hard enough. I'm saying I don't think it's. I just don't think it's always that. But I don't think it's. We'll get to LeBron's comments on this as well, because he very much mirrored JJ.
I have a different take on some of what I think was being said, and on some of Redick's other comments too. But I don't know if I think there is some of that. I also think a lot of their impatience or plays like that. And sometimes guys just take terrible shots. Like you get. Basketball players.
It's not unique to LeBron or the Lakers, nor am I putting last night's loss on that one shot by LeBron.
Yeah, no, I mean, LeBron of the big three, so to speak, played the best game. I mean, it was, of those guys, he was the best one.
Sure.
But I think what they also have is a massive, massive confidence deficit. Like they just aren't sure of what they're doing, and what when things are going poorly, guys don't I hate the expression. They don't trust the process. They cut corners. They try to do things themselves. They don't make the extra pass. Or sometimes guys are missing from where they're supposed to be, and it throws stuff off. When you have to execute at a high level all the time, when one person doesn't do it, or somebody's laid off a screen, or whatever it might be, or JJ doesn't send the right play in, or they don't call the right stuff, or whatever it is, it breaks everything down, or the rhythm gets thrown off because there's too much ball pressure. I mean, there's so many things that go into it that suddenly can get you to abandon the plan, even if when you pick up the ball off the glass, the plan was the plan. This question of margin for error got into roster construction, which, of course, as we get closer and closer to the trade deadline, touched off all sorts of chatter, and I'm not entirely sure people are getting the right point from it. I'll explain next.
Locked on Lakers is brought to you by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets guaranteed. $300 in bonus bets when you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. And the FanDuel app is easy to navigate. The variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings. And whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add a little spice to the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
So inherent in every discussion about margin for error, Andy, is a notion of how do you make that better? How do you increase your margin for error? And often that's with, if not better players, different players with different skill sets. And when JJ says we don't have a huge margin for error, nor can we create that margin organically, he's saying, like, we don't have the players to do it. It's not like a different strategy where we can unleash our guys who can, break, again, you use that example, break guys down off the dribble on the perimeter late in the clock or something like that, or, just dominate in other ways. LeBron, talking about that same margin for error question, said that's just how our team is constructed. We don't have room for error, for much error. We don't have a choice but to execute at a high level. That's the way our team is constructed, and we have to play close to perfect basketball, and we know the game is never perfect. So it's never going to be a 48-minute perfect basketball game. And of course, Andy, that got people talking about, well, are they going to improve the roster? Is this LeBron taking, shots across the bow of Rob Pelinka and Jeannie Buss to go out there and do what needs to be done? That we go through this dance every trade deadline. But
tradition unlike any other.
Is this another example of that? That seemed to be the most common interpretation of what we were seeing the other night from LeBron.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm just, do you think that's what he's doing? Because I have an alternate theory, but I'll leave it to you first.
I suppose it could be. I mean, at this point, it happens so often. I don't even know how to distinguish what is hard messaging versus medium messaging versus soft messaging versus resignment to your fate. Like, I honestly, I don't know. LeBron is known for never saying anything without reason. And I want to say it was Jovan Buha on his podcast, Buha's Block, in front of the show. People should be listening to Jovan as well. But he had noted, I believe it was Jovan, that LeBron said this at a Lakers-Clippers game, which is significant because it means a lot of LA media there. Meaning, in other words, there are maximum microphones and mouthpieces repeating this in all sorts of different spaces, which would give it a lot of attention. At the same time, LeBron knows anything that he ever says gets a ton of attention. He is a master of making sure that his words are heard. It also could just be him being pretty dead honest about this, because again, it's nothing that you and I have not been saying pretty much all season, and in a lot of ways about this roster for the last couple of years, because it's been basically the same roster.
My theory here, and I'm wondering if there's at least some of this, and you're kind of getting towards that with what you're saying with LeBron. It's LeBron's not going anywhere, I don't think.
No.
And unless he demands a trade, the Lakers aren't going to trade him. There's really nowhere to trade him, and trading LeBron isn't going to net you some sort of awesome rebuild. You trade LeBron as part of a basically do right by your stars ethos, because you're not going to get 3 first-rounders and a young player and all that kind of stuff for LeBron. You're not. You might get a decent young player, couple, maybe a first or something. Like, you're not getting tons of stuff for LeBron. No team is going to sacrifice their future to bring in LeBron at this point. I don't think. I could be wrong, but I don't think.
Well, unless they are a team. Here's the problem. LeBron makes so much money and he has a no trade clause, meaning you're essentially negotiating with LeBron if you're this other team, as well as negotiating with the Lakers. It's similar to you and I were covering the team when Kobe demanded a trade, and Kobe also had a no trade clause. And among the reasons Kobe never got traded was it was too damn difficult, right? Because Kobe had to sign off on this trade as well. And typically the players the Lakers wanted in return for Kobe were the ones that Kobe wanted to play with. So you can't work that stuff out very easily. And in the case of LeBron and the amount of salary that has to be matched, it's hard to find a team that has that many spare players, ancillary players, that you can add up those salaries and still be good while also giving the Lakers anything that they'd want. Right. It's just really difficult.
Because the Lakers would be better off letting LeBron walk away than taking on bad contracts and stuff like that. Because this rebuild, when it eventually comes, can be hard enough as it is. But so you trade LeBron because he says, I want to finish we're not going to, I appreciate it. I know you guys were doing your best. It's not going to happen here. I got 1 year left, 2 at the very most. And I really want to try to win a championship one more time. And I just don't think I can do it here. I mean, it wouldn't make him popular around town. He also might not be wrong. But if that's his approach, then you do it to honor the request and you hope you can get something decent back. I think what we're seeing, and I think you see it from Redick as well, is a little bit of CYA kind of talk. Cover your, I can say, ass, right? I can say that. Yeah. Cover your ass.
Do you not listen to our own podcast?
I just
it's been said like 1 billion times on this show.
I forget our rules.
Are you not are you not making this show your first listen every day?
I already did it. I did it the night before.
I expect our listeners not to be paying attention, but you're another story.
Because I don't pay attention to you. It's different. That's something our listeners have noted.
Explains a lot.
I think, especially when you see it from Redick, explaining what this roster is, because we are starting to get into, and I don't mean this even necessarily in a negative way to JJ, he's sort of saying what is obvious and true, and also sending a message publicly to his team about how we need to play. Like, you guys might think it's A, B, and C, but look, it's X, Y, and Z, and if we're going to do anything, everybody's got to be pulling on every possession in exactly the same way all the time. No lapses in focus are allowed. But at the same time, it also is a defense against JJ Redick, how come you can't get it done? JJ Redick, look at your offense. It kind of sucks right now. Like, the performance of this team, it doesn't look that much different than Darvin Ham. Why?
You talk a big game on your podcast there, buddy.
Yeah. It's so easy to be a coach, ain't it? And so, while I don't think we're at the point where a person is started, JJ is doing like what Frank did when he knew he was getting fired, which was basically double middle fingers to all of this. And so LeBron, though, to finish the point, like LeBron, I think is responding to a little bit of that. Like, it's a little bit of, what do you want me to do? Like, there's a limit as to what can be done with this. And I'm being realistic. And there's some admission in there that I can no longer carry the group. I think there is a little bit of that admission in there in what LeBron is saying. Like, LeBron used to be margin for error.
Yeah.
Like, by himself, LeBron was margin for error. Any team that had LeBron on it had a reasonably significant amount of margin for error, just because LeBron could do superhuman things.
Particularly when he was in the East.
So to say that we don't have, meaning the Lakers, any margin for error is to some degree an admission of, you can't, my presence is no longer enough to elevate a team to something bigger than it ought to be. LeBron of 2025 ain't dragging Eric Snow to the finals. You know what I'm saying? Like, and so I think there's a little bit of that in there of, I don't know if it's a come to Jesus moment necessarily for the team, but a reminder from everybody that, like, this is how we have to play. And it's not necessarily as fun. And it says something about us as a group that, you know what, none of us are quite as talented as whatever. And then, like, the one guy who sort of is, and Anthony Davis, can't necessarily do these things by himself. Like, we need to execute around him for AD to be as good as he can. We need to execute the game plan. We need to get on the ball. We need to coach better. But everyone has to do it on, and LeBron even says, like, on every single play. We can't combat it on multiple possessions in a row if we're turning the ball over. We have to do a better job on stuff like that. Like, these little things that you do. AD pointed out stupid fouls on James Harden, bad offensive rebounds, little mistakes that take all the wind out of what they're trying to do. They just can't afford them.
And this also, though, gets to the potential front office reaction to these comments, because many people are guessing that this is LeBron and JJ trying to light a fire under the front office's collective asses. Will that end up happening? Talk about that next. Locked On Lakers is brought to you by Prize Picks. Basketball season heating up. There's no better way to get real money action while watching your favorite NBA stars, and with Prize Picks. Whether you're a diehard fan or just love friendly competition, Prize Picks makes it fun and easy to turn your basketball knowledge into cash. And here's how it works. Pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your money. Like, let's say, for example, upcoming game, it's listed LeBron more or less than 30 points. You decide what's going to happen. Pick more or less. Or Anthony Davis, more or less than 12 rebounds. Make up your mind, pick more or less. Prize Picks lets you make your predictions, put your money where your mouth is in just 60 seconds. And with Prize Picks flex play option, even if one of the picks doesn't hit, you can still double your money. And once you do hit, you get the money fast, sometimes as quick as 15 minutes, and you can make any game, like any, exciting with Prize Picks. So now's the perfect time to join. Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. That's right. There's no need to even win to get the bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks. Run your game. We hit on before, Brian, one of the elements of this that I think is interesting in terms of the front office reaction to this, if there is one at all. As long as they have no indication that LeBron will either ask for a trade or opt out this summer, because for better or for worse, depending on how you feel about it, that is the last thing this organization wants. As I've said before, LeBron could be taking his call with the starting 5 while using a walker, and this team will keep him on the roster because they don't know what to do with themselves without a superstar. So as long as they don't get a sense that LeBron will leave over this, to some degree, there is no threat. Like, the words carry no real threat. Like, I don't think they're going to frighten the front office into doing something. Like, the idea that LeBron and JJ are saying these things, all of a sudden, it puts more pressure on the front office that they feel like they have to do something. Like, even if it gins up the fan base, like I doubt Rob and Jeannie are so insulated that they don't know the fan base is not happy with what's happening now. Like I will give them enough credit to believe they don't live in that type of bubble to think everybody's satisfied. It's been basically a hamster wheel for the last few years, and it hasn't led to any big moves other than correcting the Russell Westbrook disaster. So in that sense, what LeBron and JJ are saying, I don't think amounts to much in terms of external pressure.
I just think I keep throwing into the same bucket of like everyone knows the problem, and it's easier to ignore. They've had stretches where you could look at it and say, okay, you know what? Maybe this group doesn't need tons of help. A couple little tweaks. Dorian Finney-Smith, you go get another player. You're like, we have limited assets here, but if we kind of use them correctly, we might be able to put something together and make a run without having to do something really crazy. And, everybody, the Lakers kind of get to have their cake and eat it too. They get to make some moves. They get to look active, but they don't completely mortgage the future. They don't have to do anything super risky. Say what you want about the D'Angelo Russell trade. It might work out the way they want. We talked about it some for Monday's show. Both of us think DFS needs to play more to kind of make this trade work. And we are seeing the downside to trading D'Lo in the form of how their offense is operating. It's hurt the offense. There's no question. But that's not a risky trade. That wasn't, you're talking about trading a guy who wasn't going to be part of the team probably next year.
Never rule out D'Lo in the Lakers. I mean, I'm not even ruling it out as this summer's big offseason signing.
Can you imagine mid-level exception D'Angelo Russell?
I would never rule it out entirely.
They need a guard, Andy.
They do need.
How many free agent? Like, if you could get D'Lo at like $6 million, that's a bargain.
They actually could use a guard right now a lot like D'Angelo Russell. What I do,
so like, I think what they were hoping for was the easy decision that the team collapses, and it's just like, I'm sorry, folks, like Lakers fans, we're 7 games under 500 in a super competitive West, and there's nothing. We just can't. It'd be stupid to try to rescue this by trading for Zach LaVine or something like that.
Ironically, all the teams behind them on Monday, as we were recording, they all lost. Like the opponents of the Mavericks, Suns, Warriors, and Timberwolves all did the Lakers a favor. Even the Hornets, who played the Mavericks, did the Lakers a favor. All those teams behind the Lakers.
And I think that was done specifically to troll Rob Pelinka. It's collusion. But, so you want that answer, or like the easy one I described before of like, you know what? Hey, like, look at us. We're the 4 seed. We don't need a massive influx of talent, a couple of good tweaks around the margin. We trade a protected first rounder for this guy and whatever. Where they are right now is the squishy middle, which is like, is there like a home run deal out there that you could look maybe to say we are truly going all in on the LeBron and AD era? I think they're in the same box they were in before and have never been in a position where they're really going to be able to make a super meaningful trade in the market with what they have. But every time LeBron plays well and AD or whatever, and they either squeak out a win or it's like a cry for help, and Lakers fans are reacting to it. I don't think they want to do anything big. I really don't think they do.
What's funny about this, though, is when you talk about the squishy middle, I think in some ways that's the space that they prefer, because the squishy middle allows them to do the least amount possible with the most possible cover. When you had mentioned before, like the idea that LeBron and JJ are acknowledging, that not just the roster limitations, but in the case of LeBron, I don't know if LeBron meant it this way, but even indirectly, the idea that I can't carry a team the way I used to, say, even when the Lakers first brought me in, now 7 seasons with the Lakers. I can't do that the way that I used to, and LeBron recently said, the Nets game that they barely got by, our best player was missing, the player being Anthony Davis. On one hand, that could be just a straight up acknowledgement of the situation right now, but it may also reflect how the front office, when they're talking amongst themselves and making sure that the room's not mic'd and nobody can hear.
How do they talk amongst themselves? Is it Rob like a sock puppet talking?
No, it's Rob the Ramby and Jeannie.
Okay.
They sit down together.
Should we trade for someone? No, we shouldn't trade for someone. It's just Rob talking to himself.
I don't picture any of those four people doing funny voices. That doesn't seem like the way any of them operate. What I think is really interesting about this is I think they internally, there's a ceiling on their confidence with this group. But the problem is there's an even bigger ceiling on what they're willing to do about it. Because like I said before, they don't know what to do with themselves without superstars on hand. And I think in a lot of ways, as much as it will be disappointing for fans, disappointing for the players themselves, it is easier to just kind of exist as a 6 to 10 seed, finger quote, relevant, with stars on the roster, easily marketed, and no investment that hurts in terms of what you're giving up. I said before, when they traded for DFS, what I liked about it, aside from the fact that I thought for the playoffs it could be a good trade for them, is it represented the beginning, potentially at least, of picking a lane. Because they've been working with this group for a long time, and you've got LeBron at 40 and Anthony Davis on the back end of his prime. If you're not going to invest in it for whatever reason, in some respects, I don't even care what the reason is. If you're not going to do it, unless the point is, again, just putting asses in seats and surface level, relevance, there's no point to keeping this together as is. Like, it's pointless.
Well, yeah, I can see. Like, I think that is more
in terms of actually accomplishing.
Yeah, no, you're right, and I think
substantive that matters. I don't even mean winning a championship. I mean just doing something that takes you down a path to anywhere. Because before you know it, it's not just a question of did you waste the time you had with LeBron. It's what do you have to show for Anthony Davis's prime?
There's no question. And I think that's why they're looking at trades and saying if it helps us stay good for 3 years down the road, and you just may not be able to do any of all of those things at one time. And I think really where 2 points to make. I'll make this one quick. I mentioned what I think Redick was getting at. The downside to Redick pointing out like some of these limitations in the roster is also it points much more of a spotlight. The only thing, if there's no flexibility in the roster to improve what they're doing, the only avenue is execution and coaching. So it does put a greater spotlight on what Redick needs to do. And that spotlight, I think, is getting brighter. And I think we're seeing some of the problems that come with having a guy who's never coached before. Like, I don't know. I don't know. I see what a lot of people are writing about how they respond to things and this and that. And I fully believe that if observers breaking down tape are the coaching staff is seeing most of the same stuff. And no disrespect to the people online, but that's the avenue to improve right now. Generally speaking, you can't coach your way purely through a talent deficit. That's not how the NBA works. So I think that, that's, the upside and the downside to what Redick is framing is it does put a little bit more of a spotlight on him. But I think fans we can quit here, but fans, I think the problem with what you're saying is like, don't treat us like a mark. Like you say, pick a lane.
Absolutely.
Go all in. Maybe it works. Maybe it doesn't. This rebuild is going to be super painful as it is. And maybe this makes it worse by a lot longer. I think people are really underestimating the horrible position the Lakers would be starting over from. But that's a conversation for another day. But you're right. I think there are a lot of fans, at least, who are like, either do the thing that gives us the best possible chance, even if it's low, or do the thing that confronts the reality you're in. But by doing neither, you're just kind of, and then get every training camp saying, you know, we think we can do it this year. You're treating us like we're marks, and nobody likes that.
This is a fan base, and you and I think, know this fan base very well. They are reasonably unreasonable, if that makes sense. Like, they are not stupid. And if you explain to them and they can see a plan, are they going to enjoy the period of the rebuild? Not necessarily, but I think they can accept it more than I think the front office believes they will. And that's what leads to, a lot of times, again, taking the squishy middle, which is the worst possible path in terms of any big picture that you can go down.
Well, and there is also the other question of whether or not, if they decide to rebuild, you know, if you get to that point where you feel like you need to blow it up, is Rob Pelinka the guy who would still be in charge of that? And I'm not sure Rob wants to start the timer on his own gig, but we'll see. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go hang out with.
Question regardless of what they're doing.
With over 27,000 subscribers. We will be back. Of course, didn't even talk about tonight. Lakers versus the Wizards. If the Lakers do not win this one, it'll be torches and pitchforks, I think, across Laker Nation. But we'll see. Anthony Davis questionable, as he is for most games now, but we'll see how he responds to treatment and all that stuff, whether or not he plays. But either way, we'll be back after the game. Sign up for the newsletter, lockedondaily.com, and we'll see everyone after the game.